and welcome to episode 15 of the Talent Intelligence podcast. Today we are joined by Alan Mahon, who is the founder of Brewgooder, craft beer with a purpose. Now, Alan and I worked together many years ago, probably more years than we would both care to admit, and I'm delighted to have you on today. How are you doing, Alan?
I'm good. I always tell people that when you hired me for the Brewgooder Cinema, it was the best job of my life. I'm sure this is probably the best job of my life, but I really enjoyed it. So thanks for those 2 years of working in the cinema.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good. I've got a wee bit of a scratchy throat from coronavirus, but other than that, I'm good to go. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Let's hope you can power through this today. So first up, Alan, can you give me a potted overview of Brewgooder, how it came about and what it is that you guys do?
Yeah, so Brewgooder is a craft beer brand that empowers other people, I guess is the best way to put it. We make sure that every single one of our beers has a people positive outcome. So for the vast majority of our time, sort of with Brewgooder, that's always been water, and that kind of came from quite a personal experience that I had when I was 22. Actually, the same time I was actually working in the Brewgooder Cinema with you. I went to Nepal on a sort of volunteering trip over the summer, and it was female empowerment stuff. It was education. It was really, really cool, amazing experience. But I did what everyone tells you not to do, which is to drink an unsafe water source. So I ended up getting sick from some dodgy water and coming home to Glasgow, having to go and do some tests, found out that I contracted a parasite, got a really easy course of antibiotics, and then effectively was back on my feet again within a week. I was in Glasgow, I was with my friends, I was drinking, I was just going on with my normal life. And for me, a lot of that time, I just remember thinking maybe I've been called to do something in this water space. So for an entire year, actually, I was applying for the Department for International Development grad scheme, and then other charities and government jobs that were to do with international development. And luckily, I got rejected from pretty much every single one of them. When I did eventually leave the cinema, with a tear in my eye, I went to work for a Scottish social enterprise called Social Bite. And it was really around, I guess, empowering homeless people or vulnerable people or people who experienced homelessness to kind of start their lives again. So that was free food and coffee. So they always had something hot to eat or drink. That was employment opportunities, and increasingly all the way through to housing and policy changes from a Scottish government level. And I went from being a poor student to a poor graduate in essence, but I traded up into things that I really cared about, which were coffee and beer. And for me, beer was something that everyone could relate to. You could always have a conversation around beer, and craft beer in particular was something that really was capturing the imagination of my friends, my age group, my social sort of milieu, if you like. People were always interested in the local beers, the new styles, the American and Australians, and there was so much energy around the category. And I just thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I combined my experience in Social Bite, which was building a brand that people cared about, that also did a good thing in the world with a category that I really, really loved, and then effectively putting the cherry on top of a cause that I kind of wanted to get into from a more boring or traditional point of view. So once I had the name Brewgooder and it was a good pun, I decided to build the rest of my life and identity professionally around that. But I just thought it was quite a normal thing to do. I say normal, it was a natural thing to do, to bring the beer, the love for beer, and building that brand with water. And I think there was a natural affinity. Over time, we've actually done quite remarkable stuff. I think for the size of brand that we are, we've probably unlocked around 180 million liters of water across probably about 150 different projects, more or less in deeper and shallower ways. Impacted the lives of over 100,000 people, which is great. And more recently, after the pandemic or during the pandemic and coming out the back of it, we've actually decided that we're more than just a water brand in essence, or a water impact maker. We've went upstream pardon the pun, I'm getting conscious of all the water
puns.
puns that I'm dropping in here. But we went upstream to actually discover that we were really just about people positivity. Like, could we make beer that empowers people at home and abroad? And we'll never lose that from a water point of view. But depending on when this podcast is in circulation, there will be some beers out that are actually making impact much, much closer to home in areas that I've always kind of cared about and the team care about. And hopefully as we grow, that just becomes known that we make good beer, but we also do it for a very specific reason, having started out to do something that we always cared about making a positive difference in.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. I remember when kind of the chat about Brewgooder first came out, it felt like everyone was creating a craft beer at that time. Yeah. Like, there was just so many of them, but obviously, like, Brewgooder really stood out because it wasn't just making a beer; it was making a beer that had a positive difference. So obviously, you're moving away a little bit, not moving away, but diversifying out of just water. But that has been the core for such a long time. Can you tell me how exactly you do provide the water? What's the mechanism of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's evolved and changed and been fluid over time. I'm going to set myself a target to drop in as many water puns as possible. No, so I guess this, listen, I started this when I was 25 years old. Very, very naive. Followed a model of 100% of profits donated to our charity, which would then invest it in different charities. And that was great at the time. We somehow, looking back on it kind of defies the laws of gravity, but we made decent profits in the first couple of years. I think, probably within our first 3 years, donated about 100 grand to different projects. And how we did that was, we in essence didn't want to take on full projects ourselves, because that's quite a costly undertaking. We knew that there were people out there, I knew anyway from my research, that there were people whose job it was to create the solar powered wells or the borehole wells, or pipe water systems in different places. And really, if we could work in partnership with some of them, then we could get the most bang for our buck, because we worked really hard to make that money. We wouldn't want to do anything that was substandard or not sustainable or not reaching people in the best possible way. So for the first, I guess, 3 or 4 years of our life, we had a partnership with the One Foundation, who invested well over £2 million a year annually in various different projects, mainly in Malawi. So our first 4 years were really about quite intensive project work with them, probably in the hundred and somethings in terms of the different projects that we helped unlock. So we would always co-fund with other partners, so the risk wasn't always on us. But what that did was it created an enormously outsized initial water impact, because we were giving away, relative to our size, quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we weren't investing in the business as much, because we were effectively extracting the profit that should have been used, certainly in the early years, to hire more people, grow sales, and therefore kind of create a sort of virtuous cycle. But we were where we were, and the naivety of just powering through was really the thing that kept everything going. And that could only have gone so far until a chink appeared, and the chink that appeared was coronavirus. So within a weekend, all of your business is just thrown up in the air. You don't know when pubs are going to reopen. You don't know when. One of our big sales channels was the office beer club. So we send beers to offices up and down the country, like really big brands, and suddenly everyone has to work from home. So you're kind of put in this position where your business model is to give away profit, but you definitely know you're going to make a loss, right? And you can't. I couldn't trade, or I couldn't pretend that we were going in the right direction if we didn't have the basic profits to distribute, and we didn't know when that would be. Mm-hmm. So for me, we sat down, me and James, our co-founder, who's also Glasgow based, and we sort of sat down and kind of went, well, if we were to start again, how would we build it better, in essence? And it's quite simple once we thought of it. We said, well, why wouldn't we guarantee a certain amount per litre of beer, pint of beer sold, that allows us to effectively invest in clean water projects with every beer? Because one of the things that we would have ran up against at some point was, if you're a 2, 3, 4, 5 million pound, £10 million company, and you were to sit in front of any consumer of your product and they asked you what exact difference did my beer make, you couldn't really point to it. Yeah. So if we made sure that every single beer gave that contribution, rather than we get to the end of the year and we decide, how much profit is going to be invested, then that actually drew a kind of straight line between the drinker and the outcome.
Yeah.
So we called that the cost of goods. So we set it at a certain level per litre of beer. And then we actually realised that amount would actually generate, if we did the maths and the sums properly, roughly, we were hoping it would probably generate about 100 times the amount of beer that has been drank in essence. So there was this outsized impact per active purchaser consumption. So we went and spoke to various different water charities, and we always wanted to follow that model where we gave people money to do what they were good at.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually talked to the guys at Charity Water, who are US based, but probably the most transparent, the most progressive in terms of how they deliver water projects, how they communicate them, and said, listen, if we gave you X amount, do you think that that would be able to unlock 150, 200 litres of water? And it more or less mapped up quite well. So we decided that we would, rather than just have the cost of goods committed, we would make sure that every pint was worth 100 pints. So that's kind of how we've evolved that. And we're hoping to reach 1 billion litres of water with them by 2026.
Wow.
Which would mean a lot of beer being sold. But it's a really motivating thing because it's actually moved out of that realm of impacting people's lives and then getting to that big water number, which actually, when you think about it, will probably be much more impactful and much more sustainable over the long term.
Yeah. You hear all these stories about businesses that, changed what they were doing during COVID, but it kind of sounds as though it almost let you reset and redo the mistakes of the past, or the things that you didn't know how to do in the past.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not going to say COVID was good, because it wasn't. Like, there was no question about that. It's still creating problems for everybody.
Yeah.
But one of the things it did do was kind of give us, I guess, the space to say, there was almost a presumption that it's going to go to the wall, right? You don't know how far into the future it's going to last. You don't know X, Y, and Z. So we said to ourselves, like, listen, let's just make sure that if we do come out the other end of it in any shape or form, it's much, much more sustainable. Yeah. And that still took a year, right? That still took probably from March 2020 to about April 2021 to really get it right. But when we did, we changed everything. We changed the look of the beer. We changed the variety of beers we sell. We changed how we sold them. We built a team that was capable. It used to be a team that was younger than us or our age, and now it's a team that's much older than us, and not by decades, but people who are really, really experienced. And actually, we thought, James and I, we knew what the brand was supposed to do and what the purpose was and what the impact was, but really we didn't know how to sell beer. Actually, we pretty much didn't. So we got in people. So yeah, the notion of pivoting is one thing, but the notion of resetting is definitely much more true to what happened with Brewgooder around about 2020, 2021.
You almost didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah, pretty much.
So 2021, it wasn't just a case of pivoting and resetting. I was also reading about your work in progress that you had launched last year. Now, the point of that was to be actively anti-racist. And obviously that came off the back of things like BLM and all that was kind of going on last year. So you're obviously in an industry that's a bit known for being kind of pale, stale male, as the phrase goes. But can you tell me a little bit about work in progress, why you decided that it was something that Brewgooder were doing, and I guess what you're most proud of in terms of that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, the motivation for us to do work in progress as an internal commitment, I guess, came from, yes, the BLM movements, stuff around George Floyd for sure, I guess, sparked an international conversation around it. And James and I kind of took a step back and said, well, if we are, again, it sort of feeds into these conversations that we're having across the businesses. If we are a brand that has values and cares about things, we have to be quite explicit in how we articulate those things.
Yeah.
And almost put out a statement of intent to say we are not in any way a good example of an anti-racist company, an inclusive company, a diverse company, largely because at the time there was only really two guys. I think we had another couple of employees who were female, but we didn't want to fall into the trap of being the two white male middle class founders of this revolutionary beer brand that basically just perpetuates all the stereotypes that are in the beer industry anyway.
Yeah.
We said that we want to get to a good place. We might never get fully to that good place, but at least we're going to be honest about it. So we set ourselves a number of different targets. I think there's 14 different action points that we made around anti-racism, around LGBTQ plus inclusion, around female representation, and around disability that we wanted to kind of hold ourselves to. And the key thing for Work in Progress was that we had to release a report on ourselves to say where we went right and where we went wrong. And in a lot of areas, we didn't even get started in some things. And that was probably because we were naive and ambitious, that we thought we could do everything in a year and it would change. And, we did some really cool stuff. So we set up a bursary for a student of colour to come and do the Harriet Watt Brewing and Distilling course. So it's a world-class course, and we just wanted to get more diverse people into that because, we could say all we wanted about here's our statement, here's our values, but actually that's not really going to change the industry from grassroots level, but something like that could.
Yeah.
So we did that. We my mind's drawing blank, but we did loads of stuff, including actually starting to, I say not hire people to increase diversity, but we ended up somehow actually making a much more diverse team. So yes, there's still white males in leadership positions, but increasingly there are females, there are people of color, there are queer people in our team now that we didn't necessarily have, or but we know we wanted to make our team particularly as inclusive as possible, or representative of the society we lived in. And the thing that I'm probably most proud of really is that we actually handed it over to those people to then implement changes and to lead the changes. So Vanija, who is one of our first employee, if you like, of Brewgooder 2.0, actually she leads that, and she's going to be the one who says whether or not we're on the right track or what we can be doing better, and just being open about it. And I think Work in Progress was something that, like I say, will never be complete, but at least we have at least once a year to account for any of our actions across lots of different stuff, and it has changed who we work with as a company, what we say, how we talk, and what we do. And I think that the old Brewgooder couldn't have had that conversation because it was too focused on water. Now it's actually a people positive beer brand. So, making people more empowered at work, or, trying to find ways to increase opportunities for people is people positive. And it's now very much on brand, if you like, with what Brewgooder is all about. But really, taking a step back from the brand, it's what us as founders thought was the right thing to do, which I think is increasingly important as we start to take less and less of a hands-on approach to what the brand does on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. We've just, it's solutions driven. We did the same thing this time last year. We hired a chief diversity officer and did like a diversity promise and things, and at the time it was I think there was one woman on the leadership team, and now it's a 50-50 split. And we've hired lots of kind of people of color, lots of people of different minorities, and sometimes it's just being aware that you have biases when you're hiring, or anything that you're doing. It just makes such a difference. And looking back from this time last year to just now, which is what we're doing just now, it's just really different and really positive. It's made a massive positive impact doing that, and I'm sure that you've kind of felt the same thing.
Yeah, and I think like you say, it's not that you don't then start to see changes as a result of like box ticking or this is what we did, whatever. It actually just sort of, I guess it happens like organically. I don't mean that, because I don't think it does. I'm struggling to think of the words, and I think maybe it won't be until another 10 years time do we start to conceptualize what sort of structural changes were happening, when people started to adopt these things. But yeah, definitely, I just think it's better because you get to, I mean, I don't want to talk about Arsene Wenger and Arsenal's Invincibles team on this podcast, but there was a line in a documentary about that where Arsene Wenger said we went from being a good team with a monoculture, lots of English players, where we won the double. Within 6 years' time, they had a polyculture team from all around the world with all different talents that went the whole season unbeaten. And I actually was like, he didn't mean it like that. He didn't mean it in that context. And maybe I've read into it a bit more, but there are rewards to be reaped from that polyculture that you can't get even if things look like they're going okay with the monoculture.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I can't remember the stats because my brain just doesn't hold stats, but there are pretty compelling stats that the more diverse and inclusive any organization, any team of people are, the better the results are going to be, just because you get different schools of thought and different ways of thinking that come into it. So
yeah, no, I completely agree.
Now you were talking about the Heriot Watt in the sponsoring someone to get involved in the beer industry. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The Heriot Watt, I mean, it's a world-class brewing and distilling undergraduate and postgraduate. We provide £2,000 a year for however long the course lasts, whether someone goes in as an undergrad or a postgrad, to effectively say, here's a financial, support, if you like. But really what we try to do is to make that something which is much more, you get to work effectively placements in our team. We would obviously pay additionally to that. We're not trying to get as much as we can for £2,000, but that you can input into some of our recipe designs or learn about the branding side or the marketing side or the purpose side of what we do. And for me, like that is quite powerful, because I was chatting to somebody today actually about a previous call, and they said that one of the most important things is being able to or they agreed with the sort of statement that one of the most important things is being able to see people who look and sound like you in industries or whatever. If you never see yourself as a business leader, because you've never seen anybody who looks like you or sounds like you in that position, then you're already, the ceiling has kind of been set for you. So for us, it's kind of about how do we tell the stories of people who have been successful in brewing, who are from effectively diverse backgrounds. How do we, underrepresented people, how do we say that pathway should be open to you, and then how do we give a little boost up to make that possible? Because there are people I admire in the brewing industry who, especially someone like Garrett Oliver, African American brewmaster, just amazing guy, has pushed the boundaries of beer and food pairing with beer particularly, and made it something that's, I wouldn't say necessarily luxury, but he's made it something that can go toe to toe with wine paired food and all that sort of stuff, or food pairing with wine. And he's done amazing things. And there's I don't want to say there should be more Garrett Olivers, but is there a reason structurally that there aren't, that he is the one that I can point to rather than there being 10 or 15? You got Jägerweiss, who's a female brewer in the UK, who's just doing amazing, incredible stuff. And should there be, or could there be more people, that are the people that in 10 years' time, the future Alan Mahons will be inspired by, the future Garrett Olivers, the future Jägerweisses. And if we can play a really small role in that, then I think that would be something that's something that we'd be really proud of. So the application's open for that in June, and hopefully we'll have our first entrant to that course by September.
Wow. Well, good luck with it. It sounds like it's going to be pretty awesome for someone to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, this is a podcast with a recruitment company, so of course we're going to talk about hiring. Now, I read on your website actually that you were looking to triple the size of Brewgooder by 2023. Now, I know that you've mentioned that some things have changed recently, and it's more about people positivity. Is that still the case? And if it is, kind of how do you plan to go about that?
Yeah, I mean, recruitment is it's a hot. Well, I mean, every topic right now is a hot topic when you're growing as fast as we've experienced in the past 6 months. But we went from a team of two to a team of 12. Well, 11, 12 is incoming. In the since August, really.
Hmm.
So that's a huge need for human resource or people to basically execute the vision. It's all well and good me saying we want to grow 3 times, between now and 2023. Who's going to do that, right? And can I do that myself? Can I hire? I mean, I haven't actually hired a person since the August time. We've actually got in a managing director who has led that process and has done it really well. We've got outside support. We've done the traditional sort of I say traditional, it probably isn't traditional, but we've done, LinkedIn job applications and then been inundated and then had to sort and sift and do all sorts of stuff. And it's probably been really quite, for other people, it's been quite time intensive.
Yeah.
And that time should for most of those people be spent elsewhere in many respects. But the team that we've been building, like I say, I used to hire, and you talk about, I think you mentioned biases that you're not aware of. I used to hire people like me who were ambitious and young and probably a bit wet behind the ears, but really wanted to do good stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't build a team at all of people who look like you,
Like
because
you.
the reason you should be hiring people who aren't like you, who could do the stuff you can't do. And it took us 4 or 5 years to really discover the secret sauce was to hire people for experience and their belief and alignment with the values of the company. And we are definitely on track to tripling the size of the company by the end of this year,
Wow.
versus last year. And that's hard, but some of the projects that I guess will generate a lot of that sales growth, a lot of that profit growth, a lot of that purpose growth, sort of by virtue of that. These are really intensive projects. I mean, we're about to sort of go public with a SKU tomorrow that's hitting retailers, which has just been massively complex, really good, really exciting, but just so much hard work. And that's mainly fallen between two members of our team.
Hmm.
And they'll never get the praise publicly unless you kind of do praise them publicly. So I can't wait to basically be like, this is the amazing SKU, how good is this? But look at the people who've actually made this happen. And I think that increasingly, if we want to be a people positive company, we'll not get it right all the time. But if we hire people who are motivated, who are really experienced, who know how to put in the hard work when it's needed through those really hard months of graft, then the reward will be seeing the product come, getting the praise for it, and then hopefully getting a bit of time off to recharge. And yeah, it's a really exciting period of recruitment for us, and we might go from 12 to 18 by the end of this year, and that's something that I love seeing, because every new person that comes into the business really wants to work for us.
Yeah.
We're attracting a lot of people who are probably bigger in their experience than we are as a size of a company in many respects. But I think it speaks to the fact that people want purpose from their jobs, that they're prepared to go from, our marketing director is ex Highland Spring right down to baby Brewgooder.
Wow.
Like exactly. And for me, that jump from them is something that I want to make sure that worked for them, that they do not regret that. So it's a really interesting and challenging time. And I guess ask me again in a year's time how that whole process of finding the right people went.
One of my favorite marketers is a guy called Dave Gerhardt, and he's like just this marketing guru, right? And he always talks about hiring people who are smarter, more experienced, better than you. He's like, you should never hire anyone who you think that you can teach. He's like, you should hire people who you think you can learn from. So it sounds like that's what you guys are doing.
Definitely, and yeah, I think having the humility sometimes to realize that you're not that good at a certain thing is as big unlocker of success as someone giving you a check. Like it genuinely can be transformative if you adopt that sort of mindset that you can't do everything well. So why not hire people to do that stuff that you can't do well, and then you focus on the stuff that you're quite good at.
Yeah, everybody does the things that they can do best. Now talking about the way that you're hiring people, and people coming from things like Highland Spring, kind of leads into what I was going to talk about next, which is in the last couple of years especially, people don't just go to their jobs now to earn money, right? Now you will know that being the type of company that you are, but they also want to come home at the end of the day or finish their week and say, I did something good this week. It's more than just earning a wage. Now that's particularly like pertinent for you. Has that been something that has made people join the company? Is that idea of giving something back, not just going to work every day? Do you think that's helped you get where you are?
Yeah, there's a few interesting things, I guess. Now, I mean, it's such an interesting time to talk about why people do jobs, right? Like, I was doing a bit of research for something I'm writing about the Great Resignation and the notion that, like, actually at the time when the world economy looked as unstable as it looked, people were leaving their jobs to find potentially less paid jobs, but more fulfilling ones. And I think we have to be careful, right? We could live in this bubble where, wherever in the knowledge economy or service sector or fast growing bits of the economy, where we have the luxury to move about for that reason. And I think there are people who don't really don't have that luxury. And I think everything I say should be tempered with the self-awareness that it's not great for everybody. But I do think that increasingly there are people who are fortunate enough to be able to make those decisions. And when they are in a position to do so, they do tend, or not that they do tend, but there's an increasing trend towards them making those decisions. So, our managing director is former Heineken CEO of Kingfisher Brands. This guy could have went anywhere for quite a bit of money. And I'm not saying that we don't pay him, but his motivation is definitely different than he treats this as his own startup. He wants to not give back, but really build something forward. And I think that's the difference between, we have so many interviews with people who say, I've reached this point in my career and I just want to give back. And I get it, it's nice, and maybe it's just a poor choice of words, but for me, I don't want to give back. I want to pay forward, right? I want to build something colossal that will be giving back for us in 10 years' time, but for the rest of our lives on Earth, right? So for me, there is a difference between, like, definitely the giving back versus the building something valuable. And I think that if people were to reflect, that's probably what they would land on. But yeah, we're attracting talent that I don't think we have any right to be attracting, but because purpose is so front of mind, at least in what we say and hopefully what we try to do, that is motivating people who maybe are a bit more comfortable. And that comfort can breed discontent, and that discontent and energy and friction that they want to use their skills for something else is something that we can definitely benefit from, and we 100% are benefiting from it. I think if you look at all the hires that we're making, they come from the blue chip end of our industry rather than anywhere else. And I think that that's great for this period of time. We're going to have to look for entrepreneurial talent in the future that might come from a brand that's 2 or 3 years old rather than a brand that's 30 years old or whatever. But yeah, there's definitely a trend that we are benefiting from for sure. And I think that will probably be something that people market to their prospective employees or to retain their existing employees is purpose. Like, it's almost, you've got your healthcare package, you've got your gym membership, you've got your perk box, but we've also got this really strong purpose that makes it valuable to come to work. And I think that the people that nail that piece will be the ones who spend less on having to recruit because they're retaining in essence.
Yes, exactly. That it's not just about what you can get out of your job anymore. Definitely. So my last and final question was going to be, what are Brewgooders' plans for the future? But throughout the course of this podcast, we have discussed that you have quite a lot of plans for the future. So my last question is going to be, out of everything that you've got planned and coming up, what are you most excited about, say, in the next 12 months?
There are so many things to be excited about. I think one of the key things for us is that we are starting to get opportunities with retailers or with bar groups or with whatever, that yes, it's about supplying the beer, but it's also about making sure that there is a purposeful SKU or a purposeful beer on the bar or in the fridges of the retailer. And for me, like, the bit that I'm really looking forward to is how do we grow from the water brand to the people positive brand whilst being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we say that we're just not just attaching ourselves to any old cause because it's the cause in the news or because we think it will help us sell more beer? It's actually the opposite. Every time we have the opportunity to sell more beer, the first thing, like literally the first thing, and this is the luxury of my job, but the first thing is, how do I make that the most impactful beer possible? Mm-hmm. Yes, it could do the water piece, but also what could it do? Could it do something closer to home? Could it do something in the environment? Could it do something with, people? Could it be underrepresented people? Could it be X? Could it be Y? So for me, you will see a lot of SKUs. I say SKUs, people don't talk like that. No, you'll see a lot of beers, right? In Co-op and Asda and hopefully Morrison's, hopefully other places, as well as really, really cool on-trade venues up and down the UK. And there'll be great beers and there'll be awesome fits and they'll be with potentially sometimes out-of-category brands, which are really, really cool and really, really exciting. But they will have so much more impact that you can build a story of people empowerment through. And I think that they're all authentic. So that's a really long-winded way of saying all the new beers that are coming out are what I'm excited about.
I actually had a couple of the team were like, oh, what are you doing today? And I was like, I'm talking to Alan and founder of Brewgooder, and we had like a team event a couple of weeks ago, and we had Brewgooder beers at it.
Nice.
And a few people just hadn't had the beers, and were like, tell him his beers are amazing, by the way. So I'm sure that everybody else will also be excited about the new beers that you guys have got coming out.
For sure, I know. But yeah, that's good to hear.
Cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on today. It has been so good to catch up and hear all about Brewgooder and all your plans for the future. Yeah, thank you.
Nice one. Thank you so much.
Cool. Bye.